Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome to CG Reacts, and this is Godfather of the Green Berets, Billy Waugh. Already did the first portion of this up to 25 minutes. Yeah, yeah. I think this should be the last part. Who knows? We'll see. This is like a, a typical badass guy. Eye problems from Texas, usual suspect. He's like so far, right? It's ridiculous by the end of time, like how he was like all blown up, right? His skull was missing, and he's like, wait a minute, can I do this? Can will I be able to serve again? That is some next level shit. Everything that's happening. What surprised me that he had high adrenaline enough that he didn't pass out with the pain and shit. Because if your chunk of your skull is missing, you're gonna pass out. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. That's it.
Tested this faulty ammunition to see what it would look like in super slow-mo. I'll throw up a clip here now, but they have a full video over on their channel. After hearing this, Billy said, and I quote, "I hadn't felt this sure of anything since I joined the Special Forces in Germany in 1953. Wounds or no wounds, infection or no infection, limp or no limp, I simply had to be in this unit. There was no doubt about it." So Billy goes back to America, goes back to Walter Reed, ends up defeating that infection over the course of the next couple of months, saves his leg, and then puts in a request for transfer to this new MACV-SOG unit. They absolutely don't want to put him in this unit. At this point, Billy's 38 years old, almost lost his leg. He's still walking with a limp, but according to him, he lied, conned, and connived his way into that unit and ends up becoming the SOG airborne coordinator because he does have a ton of experience and he would still be a useful asset, maybe if not in the field, still in the mental game. Billy takes that job because he knows it's going to get him one step closer to getting back to combat. Over the course of the next 8 months as airborne coordinator, he oversees 5 MACV-SOG teams that conduct 48 cross-border top secret.
Yeah, one cannot just lie and get in like that. I think what happened there is like people in MACV probably realize how good this guy is, watching history and everything, and to bypass all this like restriction and things that are in place, right? They all basically like collaborated in a way. Like you should say this, you should do this. I'm gonna put you in this unit. You can be really useful because one cannot just lie. This is not like what is that TV show? The lawyer was Suits, right? I think it was Suits. Oh, I didn't go to Harvard, and just like even then, like he had help of the guy from the inside, right? So you can't just lie your way in. I'm pretty sure everybody in the MacV saw it be like, okay, I guess we need you, type of shit. I don't know. You could be useful in this one.
Secret missions. June 1967, Billy gets called into SOG headquarters in Quezon, and he gets briefed on a new mission. A mission that was so important, they were going to shut down all the airspace over Vietnam, and there weren't going to be any aircrafts in the air that weren't directly involved in this mission. As far as the US government is concerned, this is the most important mission on the planet. And as the briefing continues, Billy finds out why this mission is so important because US intelligence has found out that the NVA's top general, General Giap, is going to be at a secret NVA base inside of Laos, which is a neutral territory, and this is going to be one of, if not their only chance to take him out. Taking out General Giap would be a humongous blow to the NVA morale. He is the heart and soul of that entire military. Ho Chi Minh is like the political leader. He's like the president. This is the equivalent to like Patton in World War II to America. He's literally nicknamed the Communist Napoleon and the Red Rommel. If they can take him out, they could literally end the entire war right now. The problem is that the secret NVA base in Laos, codenamed Oscar 8, is a defender's dream. It is geographically perfect, making an assault on land basically impossible. So this is going to have to be an air assault mission, which isn't ideal because, as I'm sure you can imagine, trying to land a helicopter full of troops onto a fortified enemy base isn't a good idea either, but it's the best one we've got. So the plan is they're going to send in a bunch of B-52s. They're going to drop 945 bombs on this base, and then as soon as that bombing run is done, 2 Marine helicopter gunships are going to come in and do strafing runs on the base. From there, we're going to bring in the transport helicopters with like 50 SOG guys in one big hatchet force, and they're going to be supported overhead by F-4 Phantoms and Sky Raiders. And once these guys draw all the attention, we're going to send in 2 more helicopters on the other side of the base with 2 9-man SOG teams, and their entire objective is to figure out where they're hiding General Giap and take him out. And while all this is going on, Billy, the airborne coordinator for SOG, is going to be up above Oscar 8 in a little tiny Cessna plane, being the eyes in the sky for the men on the ground and reporting back.
Yeah. Okay, maybe this is not equivalent, but during the Osama bin raid, obviously there was like a recent times, like recent enough, right? Just 15 or so years ago, right? So in that time, it's like satellite images, this image, this intel, and that, and they just took basically 1 or 2 helicopters and basically went there before anyone can realize it, took him out and like got out, right? That's the modern technology. While in here, like they have to, even though this is like a wartime, neutral territory, wartime, but even then, like you need to have intel from like ground, right? You need to have like multiple contingency in plan, right? Helicopter here, helicopter there, plane here, like fire here. In modern times, things are going to be much more surgical. Drones, satellite intel, so things will be like really, like threading the needle type of way, very short window, doing something instantaneously and getting out.
To base. The next morning at 6 a.m., Billy is already up over Oscar 8, doing laps around it, getting a lay of the land, and 9 B-52s take off as they make their way over to Oscar 8 to do their bombing run. Billy's watching as the B-52s approach, and he sees the enemy uncover all of their anti-aircraft guns that are on the ridge overlooking Oscar 8 that they did not know were there. The anti-aircraft guns open up on the B-52s, but the B-52s are so high they barely even notice, continue their bombing run as planned, dropping 945 bombs directly on top of this base. But Billy is still having his oh fuck moment, because while it's not a problem for the B-52s, it is absolutely...
The B-52s are insane. Look at the flags. Oh, anti-aircraft. Oh, yeah, they can't reach us. This is the equivalent of like shooting with a handgun against a helicopter, military helicopter or something. Oh, okay. I guess they're shooting at us.
Going to be a problem for the helicopters that are coming in much lower than the B-52s were. And those helicopters are coming in like 2 minutes. So Billy gets on his radio, abort mission, abort, pull back now. Radio silence, nothing's going through. Billy's panicking, he's switching over to different channels, he's having the pilot of the airplane in front of him try to use his radio, nothing's getting through. At this point, Billy can literally do nothing but continue trying to get a radio message through as he watches in horror as the 2 Marine gunships approach, begin their strafing run, and both immediately get shot down. As soon as the gunships impact the ground, Billy can already see the transport helicopters coming with the hatchet forces, but the way that the planes crashed, they tucked themselves up inside the ridge, so those helicopter pilots that are coming in aren't going to be able to see the crash until it's too late. Billy's still trying to get through on radio, telling the hatchet forces not to land, but he can't get through, and they go to make their landing and both get shot down as well. And Billy is watching tens of men falling out of these helicopters as the helicopters plummet to the ground. From Billy's perspective, everything's moving in slow motion and fast forward all at the same time. He's watching men crawling out of burning helicopters as the 2 F-4 Phantoms...
Yeah, slow motion thing is mostly memory thing. If you look back at something, you'll feel like that things were happening in slow motion. When people realize when shit is happening, where adrenaline is high, it's not slow motion, it's actually fast forward. Shit happens really fast before you can like, you process it, you act on it, even if you're great at acting on it. Shit happen kind of like in that way. It's like a blur type of way rather than slow motion. So it's opposite of what we always see in movies and shit. Things don't slow down, it actually speeds up. But that makes sense. Adrenaline is high, everything, you just like, you experience everything faster, right? But in memory, when you look back at it, you'll think it was slow motion type of way. Our memory is also like weird that way, right? Like when we remember something, it's kind of like, this is why people like, oh, I remember playing that video game 15 years ago. You play that again, wait a minute, this looks like shit. In my mind, it was so good. Like there are people right now who like played Elder Scrolls Skyrim in 2011, haven't touched it, and they remember, oh, that was so looking great. If you show them now, even the remaster version, they're like, what the fuck is this? So in your mind, you remember things very differently.
Come screeching by, traveling at Mach 2 and attempt to hit these anti-aircraft guns. One of them gets shot down as well. As the SOG hatchet forces continue exiting the helicopter, going into bomb craters, picking up defensive positions because they're completely surrounded by hundreds of NVA soldiers. Then the Sky Raiders show up and one of them is shot down as well, and then the hatchet forces are actually able to communicate with Billy via radio. They tell Billy they've got 25 men alive, but they're completely surrounded as the pilot tells Billy, we're almost out of fuel, we have to turn back now or we're not going to make it. Billy tells the hatchet forces on the ground to hunker down. He's gonna be back. As they make their way back to the airstrip, he finally reestablishes communication with headquarters, and they don't know anything. Billy immediately fills in the chain of command. There's 2 downed gunships, 2 downed transport helicopters, a downed F-4, and a downed Sky Raider. He then gives them a description of where that ridge is with all the anti-aircraft guns, and they immediately send over planes to begin bombing that area. In addition to that, they also basically make a circle of bombs and napalm strikes around the surviving hatchet members, and just continue doing bombing run and napalm run after bombing run and napalm run, creating a wall of death protecting them. Billy makes his way back to the airstrip. The plane lands. He jumps out, runs, finds the best helicopter pilot they have, a guy by the name of Mustachio. They jump in a helicopter and take off, headed back to Oscar 8. Billy guides Mustachio to the different downed helicopters as that ridge line with the anti-aircraft guns is still getting absolutely bombarded, taking the plane down, picking up all the surviving members from these helicopter crews, and bringing them back to the airstrip. By the time they make it back to the airstrip. The Cessna's been refueled and ready to go. Billy hops out of the helicopter, hops into the Cessna. They take off back to Oscar 8 again. The only surviving members on the ground are the members of the Hatchet forces that are being pinned down by hundreds of NVA soldiers, but at least the anti-aircraft guns have been completely obliterated. By this point, Billy's overhead, but the sun's already going down, and they're not going to be able to get helicopters on the ground in the dark with hundreds of enemy soldiers surrounding them. So the Hatchet members are just going to have to fight all through the night as they call in C-130 Spectre gunships to give fire support. The Spectre gunships, the bombing runs, and the napalm runs continue to protect these guys all through the night while Billy is
Yeah, EC-130, right? That's I heard C-130. It's AC-130, right? Or tech. The best plane that ever was to me. Too badass to me, right? And they have plans to like change that a bit, right? Like trying to add some shit. I don't know. Right now they have a howitzer and everything like that. That is, imagine like, oh, AC-130 gunship is on the air. Oh, fuck me. That's the last thing you want to hear if you're the enemy, right? Just circling in top, bombarding the shit out of everywhere, right? It's like a Star Wars equivalent or like something like flying on top drone like thing and just like bombarding everything around.
Constantly flying overhead in his Cessna, observing everything. At first light the next day, they bring in 4 transport helicopters, landing them in the bomb craters next to the bomb crater that they're inside of, picking up the surviving Hatchet Force members. They get back to the airfield, they do a head count, and there's still 24 men that are missing in action. For the next 4 days, Billy and the rescue crews canvass the entire area looking for any sign of these men so that they could go down and rescue them, and for days they don't see anything. And on the 4th day as they're flying over, Billy spots a bright red rescue panel. They pivot, shift the plane to fly closer, and it's actually sitting on top of a SOG member's chest. As they get closer, the SOG member raises his arm, giving the thumbs up, and Billy marks the area, and they got to come back and get him. Billy immediately calls in a rescue helicopter, explaining that it is more than likely a trap, but they have to go in and save him anyways. He instructs the aircrew this is going to be an extremely dangerous mission, and their best chance is to have one guy rappel out of the side of the helicopter to the ground with an extra harness, hook up this other member of the team that's injured, and pick them both up as they dangle from the helicopter and fly them out of the immediate area, find somewhere else to land to actually get them inside of the helicopter. And that's exactly what ends up happening. Luckily, while it was a trap, the NVA members, after the first 3 days, abandoned the idea and figured that they weren't going to come back and save this guy and just left him to die out in this open field to the elements. So nobody actually attacked the helicopter, and they saved this SOG member. That SOG member's name was Charles Wilklow, and he is the only SOG operator to ever be captured by the enemy and get to return home. This gave Billy hope that there might still be more men out there, and he continued to canvass that area for 5 more days, finding nothing.
Yeah, I guess the reason why he was only one, because they gave up after 2 days and they realized maybe there was a mistake. So next time they didn't give up. So I guess even if somebody got captured, they couldn't be able to rescue the person, I guess. But yeah, that makes sense, right? Like, dangle down. Why would you land? Landing and taking off takes time, makes noise. People will attack you. It's best to just like grab some money and then go to safe area and then take it up, right? This was like pioneering times, right? For all this jungle warfare shit. Around this time, like they basically pioneered and all that. I don't know. All the thing we see in movies, right? All the Vietnam and things. This is basically the time where they come up with all these strategies that we see in movies today.
Not even a trace. February 2nd, 1970, Billy has fully recovered from his injuries. He's no longer walking with a limp, and he is ready to get back into the action at the age of 41 years old. Billy is told that he needs to report to his CO's office with all of his gear and alone. Billy is ecstatic because he knows that this means he's about to get orders to go do some gangster shit. The commanding officer then briefs Billy that inside Cambodia, there is a Cambodian military outpost that was heavily used by the NVA, and that's who was supplying them with absolutely everything, and in return, they were allowing the NVA to use it kind of as a way station. Intel says that the NVA hasn't been there in months. They basically abandoned the Cambodians there, and they have not received any supplies. A lot of them are starving and suffering from malaria and other diseases. So the chain of command wants Billy to lead a team to go in and see if he can potentially switch this Cambodian outpost from an NVA ally to an American ally. At which point Billy is like, just to be clear, you want me to go in deeper into enemy territory than anybody has ever been to, last we knew, enemies, and who knows, maybe they're gonna shoot me on sight, maybe I'll be welcomed, and see if they're willing to come over and play on our team. And he's like, yeah, that's That's pretty much it. At which point Billy is like, dope, I'm in, let's do this. So Billy goes, he grabs 2 more SOG guys, he grabs a commo specialist, a demolition man, and then he grabs an interpreter, and they take off in a helicopter into Cambodia. So they go in, they land the helicopter, Billy hops out, trying to make himself appear as though he's coming in peace, which he is. They're definitely not shooting at him yet, so that's a good sign right off the bat. People kind of start to gather around the helicopter, and then as the people start to gather around, the man in charge shows up, a elderly man that's known as Colonel Savut. He has very, very yellow jaundiced eyes, a gunshot wound, and a big nasty scar on his head that's long since healed. Billy and him begin communicating through the interpreter, and the colonel basically tells him like, yeah, I don't fucking like the NVA guys. They treated all my people like shit. They kind of just took all the supplies that they wanted.
You see these eyes, all he had to do is like, as soon as he heard from the interviewer, just do this. You see this? I don't care anymore. Join this. My people are dying. Let's just go at this point. I don't know.
Wanted, not caring how many supplies they left us. We've been starving and riddled with disease forever. And Billy is like, I can help with literally all of that. Goes over to the helicopter, opens up a case of just piss warm Budweiser, hands the colonel one. He's pumped, pops the top, chugs the entire thing, and begins handing out Budweisers to all of his other officers.
Bring you a beer. Sorry about you. Yeah.
Now at this point, the colonel asks Billy, okay, cool. If we work with you, how are you going to protect us? Because right now the NVA is leaving us alone to basically starve and die of disease. But if they find out that we're...
You know what? If you're starving, would a beer save you? It would, right? Like beer has sugar in it. It's a lot of sugar in it. Okay. I think beer is like alcohol, sugar, and soda, right? Or whatever you call it, like sparkling water, whatever, soda basically. That's what beer is, right? I'm pretty sure that's the case. So yeah, the sugar in that would definitely save you. So if you have only beer and if you're like starving somewhat, like I don't think like sugar alone is enough of a nutrition to help you, but short term it could help you, right? It's an energy in the end.
working with you, they're going to come slaughter all of us. Billy thought way ahead and he knew this question would pop up. He already has F4 Phantoms up in the air doing hot laps around their immediate area. So he goes over to the colonel and is like, I'll tell you what, point to anything off in the distance that you don't like. The colonel then points over to this small cluster of trees off in the distance that are kind of standing out on their own. Billy looks over at the commo guy and is like, send it. And within 60 seconds, the F4 Phantoms screech by, dropping bombs right on top of the trees. All the Cambodian men start cheering and the colonel's like, we're in. Billy immediately tells the helicopter crew they can return to where they came from, radios in, and tells them to just start sending in all of the supplies. American helicopters start showing up just one after another, bringing food, guns, medicine, medics, concertina wire, everything they need to fortify this position, feed the people, and start treating malaria. The Cambodians are blown away by how much shit the Americans are bringing in and how fast it's coming in. They're basically gonna have their own Burger King in the next 48 hours. It's American diplomacy done to perfection. You show up with guns, booze, and...
You want ice cream? We can do that as well. Ice cream. That's our motto. Military and ice cream. That's what we do. Man, every time somebody has this kind of experience with American capitalism, basically, oh, look at that, all our shit. Look at the cargo planes. Look at all the shit we bring in. People are like, oh, what the hell? Where'd that come from?
Ham sandwiches and start handing them out. It doesn't matter who it is. When you gift them with the American trifecta of diplomacy, they're always like, you know what? This motherfucker's all right. The next day, Billy begins working and training these Cambodian soldiers, getting them ready to go up toe to toe.
Yeah, we are right. We are communism. Everything Lenin says is perfect. Lenin doctrine, communism, hashtag communism. And then they're starving. They're like, look at the beer, steak, ice cream. What do you want? Who cares about communism at this point? That's the thing. That's the reality. With the thoughts and practicality, that's the difference, right? What you think means nothing if in practicality, clearly the other side is better.
With the NVA. And these guys, while they're not great soldiers yet, they're super enthusiastic because they've got food, they've got medicine, and they don't like the NVA because they treated them like shit to begin with. Within days, Billy's taking the Cambodians out and doing recon patrols, capturing and spying on NVA soldiers. Over this time, Billy and Colonel Savut end up becoming pretty good friends, and he ends up eventually getting to the point while they're drinking one night, like, okay, what the fuck happened to your forehead? Why do you got like a chunk of your skull missing? And he proceeds to tell Billy the story of how him and one of his best friends got in an argument over who was a better shot with a pistol. So naturally, they decided to have a...
Yeah, Billy is the one to talk, right? He probably has Mark there as well, where his skull was broken off. He's like, what about you, man? How about your story?
Competition to see who was, in fact, a better shot. And the way they decided to go about it was they were going to put a beer bottle on their head and let their friend shoot the beer bottle off the top of their head. Obviously. Colonel Savut apparently...
Oh, classic story of like Apple and bow and arrow when the bow and arrow was a thing. Let's see who shoots what.
first and shot the beer bottle clean off his buddy's head, and then his buddy went second to see if he was just as good of a shot and proceeded to shoot Colonel Savut directly in the head. At which point Billy's blown away and he's like, man, I bet you're not friends with that guy anymore. And he's like, no, we're literally best friends to this day.
Sorry, I thought you were a deer.
Dick
At which point
Cheney.
Billy's like, all right, I'm gonna go keep conducting raids now. Bye-bye. So SOG and the Cambodians continued to harass the NVA, and then on March 1st, one of the SOG operatives that was leading a team of Cambodians actually gets injured in combat. Cambodians get this guy back to the base, and Billy has to get this guy out to a real hospital as soon as possible. So he hops on the radio and he sends out a transmission just trying to pick up any nearby friendly aircraft. Luckily enough, an American plane responds. He's like, hey, what's up? Billy's like, I've got a medevac going on right now. Can you help out with that? He's like, yeah, I'm just on a milk run. I'm delivering supplies, but I have standing orders that I can help with any medevac, period. Where are you? Now remember, Billy is inside of Cambodia. Americans are not supposed to be inside of Cambodia at this point. This is all top secret shit. So Billy, not wanting to say I'm in Cambodia over the open radio waves, is like, I'm 32 kilometers directly west of Duck Ho, and Duck Ho is like right on the Vietnam-Cambodian border. And the pilot's like, dope, I'm on my way. Apparently not realizing that that would put him well into Cambodia. So now the plane's on the way. Billy has all the Cambodians clearing a bunch of shit out of the way to make a makeshift runway for a plane. All the other stuff they've had come in. So
They could just pretend like, okay, I was injured. I didn't know where I ran, and apparently I ran inside Cambodia 32 kilometers. What, I'm not going to ask for support? Some shit like that, I don't know.
far has been on helicopters. Nobody's supposed to be landing planes here. But he's got a guy to save, and we've got to fucking figure it out. So they clear everything out. They get as big of a runway as they possibly can. This plane shows up, does a hot lap around it, scoping out the landing field, and the pilot messages back down like, how sturdy is that ground? This is a really short runway. And Billy's like, oh, it's sturdy. I checked it. So the pilot circles back around, lands the plane. The ground was not sturdy. He ends up sinking the tires, and the plane is now stuck in mud. The pilot gets out all pissed off, like, I thought you told me the ground was sturdy, and where the fuck even are we? At which point Billy's like, welcome to the Bakev International Airport. And the pilot's like, Bakev's in Cambodia. And Billy's like, uh-huh. And this dude just immediately starts shitting his pants. Like, he's not supposed to be in Cambodia. He's thinking like he is now part of an international incident because he just down.
All of that guy. He's a pilot. When he said like 32 kilometers from here, didn't he just check it? Like, didn't he have a map? I thought back then all the pilots always had like this kind of a map with them in general area. Didn't he realize, wait a minute, we are going inside Cambodia now?
Found a plane, and it is now stuck in the mud in a country he's not even supposed to be in.
Did you know? Yes.
Worth mentioning, the plane that he landed was a
The best footage
C-123
is
provider.
right.
It's a fucking cargo plane, okay? This is not a small
Yeah,
aircraft.
Electrician has this power, right? I've been noticing in a lot of videos where he chooses the best footage he can find. And it's not easy, like, okay, what footage I need to use? Oh, I know. There is a footage of like Captain America Civil War that I can use. I'm pretty sure that's from the, I don't know, I think, right? How does he find it? Does he like search a million footages like, oh, wait a minute, this feels right? Or does he just remember? I guess he's an Avengers fan, why not?
But Billy's basically like, okay, chill, just what do you need to get this plane up off the ground? And the pilot's like, well, first, we're going to have to undig it out of the mud. We're going to have to pull it back to that tree line to give me as much runway as possible. And that's still not going to be enough runway to clear the other tree line on the other end of it. At which point the pilot's like, I'm going to need J-tow bottles to get this plane off the ground before I have to hit those trees. If you don't know, J-tow bottles are jet takeoff bottles. They're literally jets that you can strap to the side of a plane to get it more speed right out of the gate to generate more lift to get the plane off the ground on a
Damn.
shorter
Look at
runway.
that.
And the pilot is shitting his pants because obviously you're not going to be able to get J-tow bottles inside of Cambodia, but Billy isn't worried about it at all. Hops on the radio. He's Billy Waugh. They're going to give him whatever the fuck he wants, no questions asked. The J-tow bottles show up, and then they strap that to the plane. The plane takes off, gets in the air. Crisis averted. The dude's getting sent to the hospital. Hooray. Once the plane gets up in the air, Billy Waugh radios to the pilot one last time like, hey, thanks for the help, at which point the pilot replies, Sergeant Major, don't ever fucking call me again. And he leaves. Shortly after this, Billy receives intel that the NVA are building up a massive force of troops, and he is the obvious target that they are coming to take out because they are sick of him harassing them. This tells Billy his work here is done. He
Even, yeah, don't fucking ever call me again. It's like, there's nothing new. I hear that all the time.
then proceeds to evac himself, all the Americans, and then every Cambodian man, woman, and child that were living at that outpost into southern Vietnam, and lets the government take over from there. All right, 1971. At this
Tired,
point
man.
during the Vietnam War, helicopter losses are
Half of the videos, like 30 minutes is left now. 30 minutes is inside retirement.
becoming insurmountable. They're losing so many men and so many helicopters in helicopter crashes, helicopters getting shot down. They need to figure out a different way to get soldiers onto the battlefield in the right location, deep in enemy territory, that doesn't rely on helicopters. And Billy Waugh is one of the main dudes helping to pioneer this new strategy. And this eventually evolves into what we know today as halo jumping, high altitude, low opening. And what that means is it's different than normal airborne operations, right? When you see a normal airborne operation, you see that when the soldier jumps out of the plane, he then has a rope that's connected to his parachute, and once that rope reaches its end, it automatically pulls the parachute open for him, and then he drifts to the ground. Halo jumping is exactly what it sounds like. The plane is going to be much higher at a higher altitude, high altitude, low opening, and then you're going to free fall without a static line. You're going to keep track of your own altitude, and then you're going to pull your parachute at the last possible minute to get it open and keep you from splattering all over the ground. And this is still the technique that's used by special forces to this day to get somebody deep into enemy territory unnoticed. And not only does Billy help pioneer this technique, he is the first man to ever halo jump into combat on November 28th, 1970, when he jumped into Laos. From there, Billy is in theater conducting multiple halo jumps.
That is insane. He's, I mean, makes sense. Godfather, Green Berets. He's the first to do a lot of shit. Makes sense. The whole strategy makes sense, right? Like, be as high as you can so nobody can on ground hear you, I guess. Right? Jump down. Don't open parachute really early because somebody can just see the glistening light of, I don't know, moonlight or something, just like reflecting back. Oh, look at that. There's a parachute. Be as low as you can so not the, like diameter of the circle that can see you becomes very small. Makes sense.
Jump operations until SOG is eventually disbanded on May 1st, 1972. SOG ends up getting disbanded because obviously back home, the Vietnam War as a whole is very unpopular. Dealing with that unpopularity back home, a lot of the people in the conventional side of the military like to blame all the special forces guys for always getting them into deep shit. So it led to a lot of hostility on special forces in general, which is the catalyst that led to SOG getting disbanded. By December of 1972, America launches Operation Linebacker 2, which is a massive bombing campaign on the North Vietnamese, and they continue to bomb them pretty much all day and all night for about 11.
Yeah, this is a classic case of like blame the people, blame the soldiers, even like the people who like control these special forces. So shit goes right, like, oh, generals are the great, the leadership is the great, president is the great, the whole government is great. Shit goes back, oh, it's the special forces. It's the guy who led the special forces. Like, are you serious? Like, but the small people will never get the recognition at the level, right? Unless you do really good shit and get medals. Other than that, like, oh, you're just a cog in a machine. Who gives a shit? Oh, look at the general. Shit goes back. Oh, it's all your fault. You were special forces, right? Really?
11 days straight, dropping 20 tons of bombs on the enemy. In order to get that to stop, the NVA agreed to come to the negotiating table, and by January of 1973, the Paris Peace Accords have been signed, officially bringing an end to the Vietnam War. The Paris Peace Accords essentially said that both sides of the war would stop military activity in neutral territories like Laos and Cambodia, even though neither of them were actually there, allegedly.
Of course. Of course.
After America leaves, the North and South Vietnamese will come to a peaceful agreement amongst themselves. It didn't really work out that way, but that was how it was supposed to happen. Billy is super pissed off. He wants to keep fighting and win this war, but that's just not in the cards, and he's so pissed off that he basically tells his chain of command, okay, I'm 43 years old, I'm just gonna retire. The chain of command reluctantly agrees, and because he's Billy Waugh, he's a tier 1 operator, dude is a living legend at this point. They ask him, is there anything special you want to do for your retirement? And he thinks about it for a second. He's like, yeah, I want to halo jump into the parade field at Fort Bragg with some of my best friends, and then after we land, I want to dump our parachutes, take the rest of the day off, and get fucking hammered right there on that spot. And that's exactly what he does. And with that, Billy Waugh's legendary military career officially comes to an end. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the beginning of the story.
What the fuck was that?
So the legendary Billy Waugh goes into retirement. He goes back home to Texas. And from there, he doesn't really know what to do. He's legitimately...
Wait a minute, how much time is that? Yeah, so it's 25 minutes left yet. Okay, that is insane. Like, he has a... I'm guessing he, after military, he did some shit, CIA level shit. So where do you go from there? He retired from the military. Only place, like, either mercenaries, which is, like, probably antagonist of the movie. That's what's gonna happen. So did he become, like, CIA or something? Did some shit after, like, Cold War is still a thing, right? But there was a game, right? Call of Duty Cold War. What happened to that? Was that good? I don't know. I need to check that. Or some shit like that. But you know what? I have to go right now. I'm gonna do a third part later, I guess. I have to do 3 parts. Yeah. 25 type of shit. Okay, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.